It will absolutely change your life.
I found an interesting one, and I think we can look at it together. It's a DCA. It's actually from the biggest German Bitcoiner. He has a website, and so there's some German words now, but I think they're not necessary. So the English speaking will get it. It's basically we invest $35 a week since the last 8 years, so 2017 to 2025, August. And the fascinating thing, you would have invested $14,000. And today it's $126,000 with 1.1 Bitcoin. So
Crazy,
you
right?
could, if in 8 years with just like $35, which I think is achievable, I would assume for most of the people listening per week to save, and you have more than a Bitcoin. You're freaking whole coin at that point. And 2017, I know it's early. Like I didn't get it in 2017. I started only in 2020. But the same thing will happen. And I had this discussion yesterday with Opti from Simply Bitcoin, if this diminishing returns thing actually is true or not. And I'm not sure. I tend to actually not. But yeah, that is a whole nother discussion. You have a whole Bitcoin at that point, which is crazy. Like that can be like life-changing money right there. To just like have like 100K in your bank account on top of your regular income that can provide the safety net for you to say, hey, I want to try something else. Oh, hey, we need that extra expense for something, that just that extra bit of freedom. So I just wanted to show that like it doesn't even take $50 a week to get to a whole Bitcoin. If you do the same thing with $50 a week, I think 50 we said before, you have already 1.5 Bitcoin. You're closing down on the second Bitcoin. So it doesn't take a lot, but it takes patience. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. They want to get it tomorrow. They want to get it like next week, and they cannot wait for like, okay, it takes a week. And the one point that you also said, and I love that one, is over time, because you get hope again, your life gets better. Like you get hope again, and you're like, okay, that's how it works.
Yeah, and I also think it's, I think, from this point on, I quite often tell people like maybe one Bitcoin's out of reach for you from this point on. And so sometimes it can be a little bit hard for people to start. I think that it's already run. But, in these last few cycles, like the 2017 people would have been looking at people with 100 Bitcoin going, oh, I'll never get to 100 Bitcoin. The 2020 people are looking at people with 10 Bitcoin going, oh, each cycle we see that number diminishes. Like, so this cycle, get to 0.1. Even that's hard to achieve in some people's minds around trying to stack that much money. But 0.1 will still see you. This ruler doesn't change. It's not elastic like the fiat system. It's a fixed money supply. All you have to do is tether in and ride it up. So it doesn't really matter what you accumulate. It's just the time in the market. And, I'm a bit of I think returns will diminish somewhat over the long term. I mean, I don't think we'll see 100Xs this year, like we've seen in cycles past. I think those days are gone, but it will continue to go up forever. Just like Michael Saylor, that meme, it will go up forever, Laura. It will go up forever because it's a finite supply and we have ever increasing sources of demand. Every day people are waking up to this thing. Institutions want to adopt it. People want to adopt it. Retirement funds want to adopt it. That demand curve is going like that. It's going parabolic. So if we know the supply is fixed, if not diminishing over time as people lose coins and all that sort of thing, all you need to do is just start buying it and just buy as much as you can that you're comfortable with, and just sit it out for the long term. Like we said, it's not a get rich quick scheme, but it will make meaningful change to your life.
And you also talked about, and I fully agree with that. You also talked about, I asked you like, oh, like, what are you thinking in Bitcoin before we started recording? And it was interesting because you said like you are more disconnected. You're like more like not so obsessed with the day-to-day news and the in and outs of Bitcoin. How was that for you? Like getting away from the kind of, oh shit, like what's Bitcoin doing today? Or like, oh shit, like Michael Saylor bought more Bitcoin, like all those things.
It's been really nice. It's been nice to, I'll still listen to the odd podcast here and there. One I always advocate for is Rabbit Hole Recap with Marty Bent and Matt Odell as a nice, hour to 2 hour long snapshot of what's happening in the space. I think if you listen to nothing else, that would give you a good overview of what's happening. But it's been a really nice disconnect for me, and it's been a nice disconnect from like digital, my phone being in my face the whole time, because normally that's how I consume everything is via mobile phone. So it's been a really nice excuse just to get away from all of that and just completely unplug and be a bit more present. Which I'm hoping with the family it's been a good thing. I'm sure if you ask them, they probably have a differing opinions. Like, Dad, just get out of my face for a little while, but go put your head back in your phone. But no, I jest. So it's been nice just to sit back and just chill out a little bit and not have to feel like I need to consume mountains and mountains of content to keep on top of this thing. And I still argue that Bitcoin is one of the most transparent assets in the world, and that's why I sleep soundly at night, having quite a large bit of exposure and not have to throw hundreds of hours a week at it now. I think your hundreds of hours are needed initially to get the conviction, to really understand what's under the hood. But once you get a really good grasp on this asset, it is one of the most transparent things. Like if Apple stock were to spew down 25% tomorrow, you won't know about it till their financial filings or the news breaks. But with Bitcoin, you just go to the mempool and you say, hey, is it broken? Look under the hood, check your node. Is it still tick-tocking next blocking? Okay, move on. Come at me. Cheap sats. If you've got any spare change under the couch cushion, you're going to go find it. You're going to buy some more Bitcoin. So I'm really grateful for that it is so transparent. And I think that's the other thing people are starting to wake up to, the fact that it's got no encumbrance. Like it's not controlled. It's not, we're not relying on the trust of any institution or any body or anyone filing truthful filings on what might be going on in the underlying of the company or anything that happens in fiat land. It's objective truth, and it's globally distributed. And I run my own copy of this software, and I just go and interrogate that and make sure it's all working fine, and just come back later.
I love that. I think that's where like I'm as plugged into Bitcoin news as it gets. I'm talking every day about Bitcoin. I mean, I don't consume news actually in Bitcoin, but they come through the guests to me, weirdly enough. So through the guest, I have my filter of Bitcoin news. But what are the things that still came through to you? Like you said, like treasury companies was one big thing that still came to you.
Yeah, I still keep kind of on top of. I mean, I say I don't consume as much content. I'm still logging into Twitter, probably once a day, but not spending countless hours doom scrolling like I once did. But certainly keeping on top of those other activities in the space. And I spent quite a bit of time thinking about these treasury companies actually. And one of the questions actually I was going to pose to the next guest for you is to ask that person whether they think the treasury companies are the next shit coins of this cycle. And I tend to think they are. If I'm to be a little bit blunt, don't get me wrong. I think there's definitely, like Michael Saylor is doing with MicroStrategy, is just next level genius, tapping into the fiat markets. But I think a lot of the pretenders who are going to come in the latter half of this cycle, I think they're probably more smoke and mirrors than actual being able to tap. I think that game's a limited game in terms of really being able to tap into these, the preferreds he's issuing, to tap into the private equity markets and the bond markets and all the traditional fiat space. I don't think will be as easily accessed by all these other treasury companies that pop up. And I do, in a way, think they're a distraction. I think, in a way, that's why we're not seeing mempools overflowing. why there's not much activity on there. I think there's a lot of people turning towards the ETFs and these treasury companies to point some of their loose capital towards, because they think they'll ultimately outperform Bitcoin. And if I was to caution anybody listening who's curious in that, is just stack Bitcoin. If you want to have a little bit of a flutter, make it a small percentage of your overall stack. Like, your goal should be to accumulate as much Bitcoin as you can in self-custody, and whatever that means for you. But if you want to have a little flutter around the sides, I would stick to the main players, right? But I do think MSTR and the likes of MetaPlanet do have a good shot at outperforming Bitcoin this cycle. However, I still would argue that it should only be a small percentage of your overall stack if you're going to play around in those games.
Treasury companies are really interesting. I feel like they're providing pipes from locked capital that couldn't flow into Bitcoin directly towards Bitcoin, and this is great. But then there's also the question of like, how many of those companies servicing those pipes do we really need? Do we need 25 strategies that basically do the same thing? At some point, I think there will be like a few winners, maybe a strategy, maybe a few others that do those things very well, because there is a very big chunk of money. I think Saylor talked about like 97% of the overall capital that is still locked into instruments that cannot even buy directly Bitcoin. And this is the things where he kind of types in with his pipes, with the strategies, with the how they stretch, strike, stride, like all those option things and all those products preferred from strategy. Those are really interesting, but I personally don't do anything with them. But it's interesting to kind of get onto this capital. But how many of those pipes do we really need? Like, do we need like, I don't know, 500 of treasury companies? At some point, they will get unprofitable and probably run out of business, and there might be like 2 or 3 that are doing a good job in servicing those pipes. I don't know.
I agree. I think there'll be like a winners take most type of approach. I think there'll be a few dominant players. Obviously, MicroStrategy will be the mainstay, but these other ones that pop up, I still think it's still a good idea for all companies to stack Bitcoin. I just don't think that being able to tap into the leverage of those market, they won't be open to 1,000 companies, and it'll quickly dilute, and there'll be a couple that'll be able to do it and do it well. And I think MicroStrategy's definitely run out the gates in terms of that. And I would just caution other people, like, coming up with the next, I don't know, UK based company that says they're going to tap into the capital markets and stack Bitcoin in a leverage way. I would just caution them, because I think that, for people who don't spend a lot of time in the space, it might seem attractive for them to be the next person who can 100x their stack in terms of Bitcoin. Whereas, MicroStrategy can't 100x their total Bitcoin stack from this point in time. So I think sometimes it's attractive to think about, get on the next horse, just like the IPO craze or the ICO craze and the shitcoin craze and the NFT craze and all these other things. I do tend to think that some of these are a little bit dangerous game to play, and they're basically, a lot of these will pop up. I'm not saying anything about ones that might already be in circulation, but a lot of these will pop up purely to take retail money.
And
They'll be.
And I think there's like a very important difference that you said. If a company just exchanges their dollar balance sheet to a Bitcoin balance sheet, like there will be all of the companies will do that at some point. Like that,
100%.
that's like a logical thing to do. With treasury companies, I mean more of like, are you trying to tap into leverage intelligent credit products to leverage those things? So this is kind of the servicing pipes that we probably don't need a lot, but every company, like I'm stacking Bitcoin. Like with my small podcasting business, I save everything in Bitcoin just as I do personally. So of course, like that, but that's not a treasury company. That's just like a
No,
company that has a treasury in Bitcoin.
definitely agree. There's definitely a distinction between what we're talking about here about tapping into those leveraged markets and those just saving Bitcoin. Because I wholeheartedly agree. I think every company will and should have Bitcoin on their balance sheet. It's the only way to carry, whatever your cash balance is on your balance sheet right now, it should be in Bitcoin.
100%. You also said that you are looking into, or maybe even doing it, the borrowing against the Bitcoin, the lending products. How do you approach how do you approach them?
Yeah, not personally doing it yet, but definitely something that's on the radar. I guess just spending a little bit of time researching that space, understanding what type of products there are, and obviously the risk that's associated with all of them, because they all have a degree of risk. Recently just come across a pretty good website called zone21.com, which compares a lot of the Bitcoin lending products. It's not exhaustive and it's very US centric, but it does have quite a good weighting score in and amongst a lot of those lending products, which I found quite interesting. As well as a bit of a deep dive into what's under the hood in terms of the technology that backs your Bitcoin. So obviously what we learned from the last cycle was it's very, very dangerous to give anyone your keys or control of your Bitcoin. So if you're going to enter into these loan type products, it's really important to understand how they operate and where all your risk lies. So for me, it's interesting. And I think, this next cycle will be the cycle of a severe broadening on those institutional type grade offerings. I think more and more players, as well as the traditional system, will start to come into the fold in terms of what they offer. I mean, everyone wants to get their hands on your Bitcoin, right? A couple of that are sort of standing out to me at the moment, which kind of seem interesting. Is the ones like, and they've been around a little while. As Debify, Firefish has just come across my radar that I'm digging into. And what I like about those types of things is they're taking that multi-sig type of approach with smart contracts to the way that lending works, so that they don't necessarily custody your Bitcoin. There'll be, whether it's a 3 or 5 or a 2 or 3, and they've all got various technical variations on how they manage that Bitcoin, but it's much more attractive, I guess, in taking that mini script type of approach to managing Bitcoin in terms of, you feed external data in there. There's pre-signed PSBTs that would trigger in certain conditions. You get some Oracle data from the external world on pricing, and then framing them up into a pretty attractive way that these people can't rehypothecate your Bitcoin. And that's really, one of the major concerns for most people is, hey, do you have control of my Bitcoin? And then if you do, are you rehypothecating it? Where more of these products are now coming, about that it's actually impossible for them to rehypothecate your Bitcoin because they don't custody it. So I find it a really interesting space, and I think even this next 12 months, I think we'll see more and more of those type of products pop up. And it's, again, just sort of interesting to me in the sense that, like I spoke about earlier in the pod, is just having optionality in and around your Bitcoin. My goal would be ultimately to never ever sell a single sat. My goal would be to intelligently borrow against my Bitcoin into perpetuity. And it can be a hard concept for people to grok. I often speak to clients and so forth in my role with the Bitcoin advisor, just in around that notion. And it's probably easily expressed in property. Like a lot of people probably understand the property game about tapping into equity to fund your lifestyle and building a property portfolio where you can continually, sort of tap into that equity to fund your lifestyle and service debt and so forth. And that's essentially the same playbook that I'm hoping to take with my Bitcoin over the longer term, is to start borrowing against it, start, taking my foot off the throttle in the fiat world a little bit, and then use some of those borrowings to help fund lifestyle, pay for holidays, improve your lifestyle, renovations to the house, God forbid. Last thing I want to do, but wifey finds that valuable, so happy wife, happy life, so they say. So, yeah, that's an interesting space for me at the moment.
Happy wife, happy life. I get that. um, I the only problem I have still with those products is I don't find the terms attractive enough currently. Like I would, and actually Sailor posted that picture where he says what is intelligent credit, and he says basically a graph of like interest rates and duration of the thing, and he says like above 10 years and under 10%, which would be like amazing, but even coming close to that would be ideal. And most of the products, and I haven't looked into them so recently, so maybe they already gotten better, but most of them have like 10, 12, 13, sometimes even like over 15% of interest rates. And then it's just like for like a year or two, it's too expensive and too short term for me personally right now to do it. I mean, for me, there's no reason, because like I'm going through full throttle with the podcast and some small other businesses that I'm doing with Bitcoin. So I have income, so I don't even have time to research that stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to deal with that right now. But it is something where I'm like, it is interesting and I really want to do it. But every time I research it, I'm like, those products are not quite there yet. Like, I don't know why we can do real estate with 3% for 30 years. Bitcoin is way better collateral than real estate. Like, you can liquidate it in any second. Like, it's so quick. Liquidating real estate is so freaking hard. Like, why are we paying 13% for Bitcoin, but only 3% for real estate? So I don't know. That's the only reason that I really cannot do it right now.
Yeah, probably a couple of interesting comments, I suppose. One, I think not everyone's got access to the capital markets to the degree in which Sailor does. So, borrowing at, anything less than 10%, I agree, would be ideal. Sailor can borrow at less than 1. So, I don't know if he is necessarily, someone I could compare myself to personally. But then the other thing I would also say is a lot of these are starting to operate like a peer-to-peer market. And I would also argue that maybe that 12%, 13% rate is around the natural watermark for where a natural interest rate would sit without fiat manipulation. So if we expect inflation is more than what they tell us, certainly by measured CPI, like my personal inflation, I often estimate to be actually around 8 or 10%. So if I'm on the other side of that deal and I'm lending to you, I would need something above 8 or 10% because my personal inflation rate's about 8 or 10%. So it kind of makes sense to me. I agree. It's definitely something to swallow. And it's quite high in terms of being able to go to a traditional fiat institution and borrow at 3% for 30 years. The thing I'd say about duration is because they are so high, I actually don't mind having a shorter duration because we just simply don't know what's around the corner. So I would hate to be locked into a 4-year term paying 18% or something along those lines when we've got so much development happening in the space that I might be able to roll that out without penalty. For example, there's a whole heap of different things that might come into shortening your duration prematurely if you are locked into those type of things. And the other thing I would say is that I think more and more that peer-to-peer relationship, we're starting to see those interest rates come down a little bit. I'm, again, by no means an expert on that. But, Firefish, for example, you can go and put, as I understand it, I certainly haven't done it yet, but the research that I have done is you can go and put, I want to borrow X amount for X amount of time, and here's the interest rate I'm willing to pay, and you put it out to the market, and you'll either be met or you won't be. So, by all means, you can go out there and say, hey, I'll only pay 6%, but you might not find a match. So I think, that watermark starting to be found in those peer-to-peer markets, which I think's really interesting.
Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.